Children and parents. A child becomes an adult when he realizes that he has a right not only to be right but also to be wrong. Control communicates care and devotion to children, condescension and disdain to adults. Herein lies a fundamental dilemma of society. It ought to encourage parents to love and control their children, and politicians to respect their fellow citizens and leave them alone. Modern societies are well on their way to inverting this arrangement. They encourage parents to fake respect for their children and thus justify their failure to control them, and politicians to fake love for their fellow citizens and thus justify their efforts to exercise capricious control over them. Because children cannot accomplish as much as adults, they are usually rewarded for effort. But they must be taught that what counts in life is not effort but achievement. If children are over-rewarded for effort, they may continue to seek approval solely for trying instead of for succeeding. This dooms them to failure, for if they succeed only at trying hard, and if they fail dismally. The two tasks of youth, developing self-discipline and acquiring marketable skills. Accepting suicide, the most serious decision in life should be to have a child. However, not to have a child, if one is capable of having children, should perhaps be an even more serious decision. Although it is hard for a son to compete with a successful father, it may be even harder for him to compete with an unsuccessful one. This is because most young men find the prospect of their own failure easier to bear than the prospect of being the instruments of their father's humiliation. Parents teach children discipline for two different, indeed diametrically opposite reasons: to render the child submissive to them and to make him independent of them. Only a self-disciplined person can be obedient, and only such a person can be autonomous. Some parents want their children to have it better. Others want them to do better. The former are likely to have incompetent and unhappy children, the latter competent and happy ones. Why do children want to grow up? Because they experience their lives as constrained by immaturity and perceive adulthood as a condition of greater freedom and opportunity. But what is there today in America that very poor and very rich adolescents want to do but cannot do? Not much. They can do drugs, have sex, make babies, and get money from their parents, crime, or the state. For such adolescents, adulthood becomes synonymous with responsibility rather than liberty. Is it any surprise that they remain adolescents? Formerly, when parents couldn't cope with their children, they enlisted relatives to discipline them or hired governesses and tutors to do so. Now, they abuse them or hire child psychiatrists and mental hospitals to do so. In the past, parents and psychiatrists tortured sexually active, masturbating children with mechanical restraints. Today, they torture hyperactive children with chemical restraints, psychoactive drugs. The moral: only adults and drugs are allowed to be active. Children should be seen, not heard. As a parent, perhaps the most important message you must convey to your daughter or son is: listen to your inner voice and trust it. Listen to and learn from others, but never let them undermine your confidence in your own judgment. Of course, you won't be able to do so unless you yourself believe it and act accordingly. Juvenile court judges now routinely send children deemed to be ungovernable or in need of supervision to psychiatrists. The child, reasonably enough, views the psychiatrist so imposed on him as his adversary rather than his ally. The psychiatrist who sees such a child insists on viewing himself as the protector of the child's best interests. The parents and juvenile court judges who initiate this process insist on viewing themselves as helping the child get the treatment he needs. If we wanted to hasten the destruction of children injured by parental neglect, it would be difficult to devise a more effective mechanism for doing so. In the universe of persons, children rank first both as the most wanted and the most unwanted. Depending on the child's age and the society by whose rules his parents must guide themselves, there are about a half-dozen ways in which the latter can, legally, get rid of the former. Some of these methods of disposing of unwanted children are even considered to be socially praiseworthy. Thus, the fetus may be disposed of by abortion, the infant by adoption or infanticide, the older child by adoption or confinement in an orphanage, the adolescent and the adult child by confinement in a mental hospital, and by further destruction of his self there, by sterilization, electroshock, lobotomy, or antipsychotic drugs. In the United States today, there is a pervasive tendency to treat children as adults and adults as children. The options of children are thus steadily expanded, while those of adults are progressively constricted. The result is unruly children and childish adults.